All right, on behalf of Flagler Cares and One Voice for Volusia, welcome to the 2021 Health and Human Services Summit. My name is Dale Schuberg, and I will be the moderator of this session. You have joined the session titled How to Tap into the Continuum of Cares Homeless Service Network. All participants will be muted during the session. There will be a Q&A time at the end of the session for you to pose questions. You may raise your hand using the reactions button at the bottom of your screen. We will then call on you and allow you to unmute yourself. You may also submit questions during the training in the chat box, and we will pose them to the trainer throughout the session, actually, and at the end of the session, if time allows. Thank you to the sponsors who made this event possible: Advent Health, Career Source, Flagler Volusia, SMA Healthcare, Magellan Complete Care, Department of Children and Families, and the House Next Door. It is my pleasure to introduce your trainer for this session, Jeff White.
Hi, everybody. And again, my name is Jeff White. I'm with the Volusia Flagler County Coalition for the Homeless. And this is basically an overview of the Continuum of Care system. We're going to talk about best practices that we use, setup of the Continuum of Care, the funding that we have in place, and basically, how to proceed forward if you have a homeless person and how to link them into services. I got a large amount of information to kind of squeeze in here, so I'm going to kind of fly through this. So, if you have a burning question, you can say burning question, and maybe Dale can pop it in, but for the most part, hold your questions till the end, and then I'll answer any questions. What I'm showing right now is our annual point in time count trends. And what we do as a continuum of care, and there are 400 continuum of cares across country that have to do this annually during the last 10 days in January, one 24-hour period during the last 10 days in January, we actually as a community go out and count every homeless person and survey them, or try to survey them in the Volusia Flagler County area. There's no way we're ever going to count every homeless person, but the goal is to count as many as we can possibly lay our eyes on and survey them and get as much information about them as possible. This is an indicator. It tells us whether or not our homeless situation is increasing or decreasing. And as you can see by the trend line, after the Great Recession of 2008, our homelessness increased for several years up until it peaked in 2012. We've been doing really good pretty much since then in putting best practices in place like rapid rehousing, permanent supportive housing, coordinated entry to help decrease our homelessness in our two-county area. I'll tell you right now, the impact of COVID is going to mirror what happened in 2008, and we're not going to see homeless. All the research that I've done indicates that we're not going to see our homelessness peak from the impact of COVID until about 2023 or 24. So we need to really, get braced and prepared for an increase in homelessness. Again, there's no way we can count every homeless person, but we do our best to go out and try to capture as many as we can. The pit counts literally homeless people. That's people on the streets, living in places not meant for human habitation, underneath bridges and encampments, things like that. HUD has several different definitions of homelessness depending on what funding source it's using. And, therein lies a lot of the problems and arguments that come with the pit, because a lot of people are in hotels, motels, or doubling up with families or friends that are actually homeless, but because they're not literally homeless, they aren't counted in the pit. So what we try to do, even with the annual point in time count, is look at other definitions and other ways and means to measure homelessness, like the homeless count in the school systems, and incorporate that into our overall planning for the continuum of care. So the Commission on Homelessness and Housing for Volusia and Flagler Continuum of Care and the Volusia Flagler County Coalition for the homeless are one and the same. That's actually not true. Again, there are 400 continuum of cares across the country, and each continuum of care is tasked with developing and improve community-based service networks to end homelessness and administer the HUD grant system and its funding of contracted partners. We have a separate Commission on Homelessness that is a volunteer board of stakeholders within our community that actually provide the governance of our funding for our 2-county area. The Volusia Flagler County Coalition for the Homelessness is actually the lead agency. So we are kind of like the administrative arm, whereas the Commission on Homelessness and Housing is the governance for our funding and you know, our strategic plan and how we address homelessness in our 2-county area. Again, governance and oversight, policies and procedures. You know, that's on homelessness and housing. The COHH makes recommendations for funding based on homelessness and housing services. And, you know, it's important to note that, you know, participation from a broad range of stakeholders and participating agencies is really huge in providing enough oversight so that we can address all of the gaps in service areas, you know, domestic violence, the community-based care for those families that are, you know, like have difficulties with drugs and alcohol, that face homelessness, things like that. You know, we have stakeholders from, you know, like banks that, you know, offer support and other funding sources that come down through our area. Participating agencies that provide the homeless services themselves, Halifax Urban Ministries, Flagler Cares, Neighborhood Center of West Volusia, the Salvation Army, Catholic Charities, you know, just to name a few. Funding distribution is determined by the Commission on Homelessness and Housing for the funding that flows through the COHH. We have what's called an applications committee, which actually reviews all of our local applications for funding and ranks them and scores them and distributes funding accordingly. So it is a competitive, we call it a local application, and it is a competitive process for HUD funding and for the DCF funding, which includes the Emergency Solutions Grant, the Challenge Grant, and TANF, Temporary Assistance to Needy Families, Prevention Grant that flows through our system of care. Again, the Coalition for the Homeless is the lead agency for our continuum of care, and we are responsible for the submission and administration of all DCF grants under what's called the Unified Grant Contract. And we are also the HMIS lead agency. We administer the Homeless Management Information System database, and I'll talk a little bit about that more later on in the presentation, but that's a database where we try to capture every homeless and at risk of homeless person, use some type of services throughout our homeless and housing crisis response system of care. So again, you know, the Volusia Flagler County Coalition for the Homeless administers what's called the coordinated entry process to optimize service coordination between network partners to maximize efficiency and use of local resources. Right now, we have 18 local organizations that utilize the Homeless Management Information System, HMIS database, and enter into our coordinated entry process. Coordinated entry is a requirement by HUD for all participating agencies that receive any kind of HUD funding or DCF, state of Florida funding, and we take it a step further in as much as any kind of Volusia County, local Volusia County funding that processes through our area. they require HMIS and coordinated entry participations. So we're going to talk a little bit about the homeless crisis response system. And this is just like a, kind of like a question to see who knows what. Emergency shelter and transitional housing are the foundation of the homeless crisis response system of care. The answer actually is false. They are part of it, but the homeless crisis response system of care includes outreach, diversion, prevention, emergency shelter, transitional housing, permanent supportive housing, rapid rehousing, attainable housing, and it all flows through HMIS and coordinated entry. So to say that a person that receives that notice of, that their electric's going to be shut off, is not in crisis is a understatement. Anytime your housing is threatened, people go into crisis mode. To say that a person on the street seeking housing, that is literally homeless, isn't in crisis is an understatement too. The levels of crisis may be different, but at that point in time for either party, the level of crisis is severe to them. So, no one component trumps another as far as, a person's need for services and what they're feeling at that time. That's why, like when we deal with people, trauma-informed care is so important. Motivational interviewing, meeting people where they're at is so important, to let them tell you where they're at and what their needs are, so that we can more adequately link them with the appropriate services. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about HMIS, Homeless Management Information System. This acts as a single point of entry into the homeless crisis response system, and that's actually true. HMIS supports coordinated entry, and that's a no wrong door approach. It is web-based, supports mobile outreach workers and numerous intake locations. So we have 18 agencies that participate in HMIS, and that's inputting into our homeless management information system. Anybody that is an HMIS participating agency can enter a homeless person or at risk of homeless person into the HMIS system and coordinated entry system of care. So again, it's a no wrong door approach. We do have outreach workers that go out into the streets, look for encampments, look for those homeless people living in their cars, things like that, try to capture those people that otherwise don't know where to go and might fall through the cracks in order to get them into the coordinated entry system. But, other people are, calling up some of the agencies and saying, hey, I'm homeless, can you help me out? And, Halifax Urban Ministries or Neighborhood Center or, Salvation Army, Catholic Charities, New Hope Ministries, I can go on through the 18, but they all have the ability to enter people into the homeless management information system and gather as much data as they can to start moving the process along, so that person can be linked into coordinated entry and matched to the appropriate level of services that they need. Another thing about the homeless management information system is that it is a database, and we can pull, we can gather a lot of data and pull numerous reports that's going to help us determine the gaps in funding that we have, the gaps in need that we have, and support our system's performance measures that HUD requires us to do, like length of time homeless, returns to homelessness, exits to permanent housing, and things like that really help us gain more funding down the road. If we're doing better, if we can show an increase in our ability to rehouse people in as little time as possible, that helps us, access more funding in the future. Coordinated entry. Coordinated entry is a process developed to ensure that all people experiencing a housing crisis have fair and equal access, um, are quickly identified and referred and connected to housing and assistance based on a prioritization of their needs. So this is the way, 7, 8 years ago, this is kind of like the way we work. We find somebody or somebody walk into the office and say, I'm homeless, any office in Volusia or Flagler, and that person would try to say, well, you need to go to the emergency shelter, or you need to go to permanent, there's some permanent housing options out there, but I really don't know where they're at, but we'll try to send you over to neighborhood center. I know they have it, or prevention services through Catholic Charities. I know they have it. So it was kind of like a mismatch, a hit and miss. Some people followed up, and went. Some people went to several different places and never really got the services they need. So it was really kind of a mess. This is how coordinated entry is supposed to look like. And we are really getting pretty close to making it happen this way. There's always room for improvement. There's always adjustments that we make along the way, but we're getting better and better as the more we do it, the better we get at it. So we can refer everybody into coordinated entry through the HMIS process, Homeless Management Information System database, and then through coordinated entry, kind of match.com them to the services that they need, whether it be permanent supportive housing, rapid rehousing, veteran services, link them to emergency shelter or transitional housing. This is kind of just like another view of looking at it. You have all these people up at the top that are homeless, and they're referred down through the funnel into coordinated entry, and then they're dispersed to the available services that they need. Now, this chart came from a HUD database, which kind of like over the last 20 years, HUD has determined that 40% of those who end up homeless just need general housing help. They may need just pointing them in the right direction. They're homeless and they don't know where like the most affordable housing is. So we link them with the landlord. They have some means to get back into housing, but they just need to be pointed in the right direction, or they may need assistance, some minor assistance with getting their utilities started or deposits, things like that. About 40% of the people that fall into homelessness, and individuals and families, will need rapid rehousing. And, that's another level of a little bit more intensive level of care, where they're subsidized from anywhere from 3 months to 6, 9 months, 12 months. With some funding, it's up to, it can be up to 24 months, but for the most part, it's what we do in our continuum of care is short-term rapid rehousing, anywhere from 3 to 12 months. And rapid rehousing includes the interventions of, like subsidized rents and assistance with utilities, again, for a shorter period of time to help people get back on their feet and into housing quickly, and then transfer the ownership of that housing over to them. So, over the course of time, where there was a subsidy in the beginning, it decreases over time until they're paying the full amount of their rent to the landlord and assume that housing on their own. And about 20% of the people that fall into homelessness are those people that really need the permanent supportive housing. They need the subsidies. Those are the people that have been out there for a long period of time, or have a disability. They're the chronically homeless people that really need the supportive case management along with the subsidies, like Section 8 or mainstream vouchers through the housing authorities, or the permanent supportive housing that we offer through the continuum of care, where there's case management that follows them into housing and helps support them and make sure that they're, not falling back into homelessness, and they're being linked to the services that they need, whether it be substance abuse services or mental health services, or other general assistance. So I'm going to skip that one. So what we have here is kind of like, again, one more view of our coordinated entry system. We have facility or government-based organization, street outreach, and community-based non-for-profits out there that identify the homeless people. And they do what's called a service prioritization decision assistance tool or screening in order to prioritize the homeless individuals by acuity of need. So, those with the most severe physical or mental health or substance abuse issues, or, they may have HIV/AIDS or things like that. Those are the people that are going to surface, the people that have been out there for the longest length of time, the chronically homeless people. Those are the people that are going to bubble to the top that need assistance right now. If we don't get them off the street into housing, they're going to end up dead. They're at high risk of, complications, ending up in the hospital, things like that. So again, coordinated entry is based on prioritization of need. And it's, again, because we have so many people being funneled through and they have different levels of acuity, we try to do, like the match.com type thing, really prioritize those people for immediate entry into housing, but also match those less severity of need people to the rapid rehousing options that really are going to benefit them and get them into housing in as little time as possible also. So this is just a drop down from that. Homeless prevention, emergency shelter, permanent housing, transitional housing, affordable housing, with some of the agencies that facilitate those resources in our area. Okay, what are the benefits of network and coordinated entry participation? Again, it has a single point of entry through the HMIS system with consistent processes for referrals and appropriate services throughout the network. Coordinated entry reduces the length of stay and increases positive outcomes. If we can get them linked to housing in a shorter length of time, that benefits everybody. It benefits the people that are homeless. It benefits our communities. We're not supporting their homelessness. And believe me, homelessness in communities is expensive. It costs our communities a lot of money. Lease clients to service based on prioritization and need. Again, those with the most acuity of need are the ones that we concentrate on getting into housing first. It reduces duplication in data collection and duplication of services. If we have a central database where we know what services we're providing to who, we can check and go in and see that they're not getting duplicate services from duplicate agencies. And again, if it's working the way it's supposed to, when we're entering client information into the database, which is a HIPAA compliant database, it is there for those participating agencies to see, so that we can make sure that, once we got the birth certificate uploaded into the system, it's there, and, we don't have to go looking for that again. So it has a lot of functionality in that respect. We track status, positive, accountable outcomes, and length of stay of guests. Again, we can see the length of time people remain homeless, how long it took them to get into a housing unit, and how, if they're successful in maintaining that housing, or if they return to homelessness. It is useful for identifying trends and gaps in services. Where are we doing well? How are we, what components are working well for us, like rapid rehousing? Are we housing a lot of people through rapid rehousing? Is the length of stay before they get into rapid rehousing decreasing? Do we need more permanent supportive housing? Are there people out there that we can't get into housing because their needs aren't met by rapid rehousing activities? So there's a multitude of things that we look at. And it provides structured networking with providers to increase shelter support. Okay, so single points of entry. Any homeless management information system, HMIS participating agency who can enter into HMIS actually. We have the Volusia Flagler County Coalition for the Homeless Outreach Team. They can go out and do enter people into coordinated entry through HMIS. We have SMA Behavioral Path Outreach Team, and that's an outreach team that targets people with homeless with severe and persistent mental illness. Neighborhood Center, Halifax Urban Ministries, Salvation Army, New Hope Ministries, Community Life Center, Healthy Start. I should add Flagler CARES on here as well. And again, there's about 10 others that are participants in HMIS systems that can act as that single point of entry to enter anybody into coordinated entry and get the ball rolling so that they can start accessing services. Again, you know, outreach, it's collaborative effort working on creating an interagency outreach team. So we have our Homeless Coalition outreach, targets the street homeless or places not meant for human habitation. SMA Path targets literally homeless with severe and persistent mental illness. VA outreach, they've kind of changed their structure a little bit, and their outreach isn't as prevalent as it was, but we still partner with the VA to identify the homeless homeless vets in our area. We have a neighborhood center, Daytona Outreach Center, First Step Shelter, other non-profit organizations that can act as kind of in-reach outreach centers. We also work with the school systems. We get referrals from the schools for their homeless outreach. We get referrals from law enforcement all the time saying, hey, you know, we run into this person, they're homeless, you know, what can we do? And we try to link them actually with our VFCCH outreach team in order to make sure that we get an entry done. So any single point of entry into HMIS can act as an outreach in the form of in-reach for identifying literally homeless individuals or even those at risk of homeless. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about permanent housing interventions. What works and for whom? First thing is diversion. You know, if we run into somebody that is facing homelessness or is just about to fall into homelessness, we try to educate our agencies to ask the right questions. And that is the diversion questions about what resources those individuals and families actually have that might prevent them from hitting the homeless ranks. So, you know, in HUD's view and in our view, if we can get a family to identify maybe a friend or a family member that can house them for a short period of time while we work to get them the assistance needed to get them rehoused, that's better than them actually becoming homeless, going into a shelter or, you know, a transitional housing unit. Because once you hit the homeless ranks, it's that much more difficult to get a family rehoused. And again, you know, it's asking the right questions. It's tapping into the resources that people have, but they might not realize they have. And diversion, you know, actually is the best and first place that we need to start. Rapid rehousing. This is short-term financial assistance, rent assistance, deposits, security deposits, utility deposits, combined with short-term case management services. So these are the, you know, like the families that, hey, you know, like are living paycheck to paycheck and, you know, my car broke down and I had to make a choice to get my car fixed and keep my job or not pay my rent. So I didn't pay my rent and now I'm getting evicted. Well, this is a family where, you know, like, again, when you look at them, they just need that little bit of assistance, financial assistance, first month's rent, last month's rent, security deposit, maybe 2 or 3 months of assistance to help them get back on their feet where they're off and running again. The beauty of rapid rehousing is that, most of the people that go into rapid rehousing take off on their own. They don't want to become homeless again, so they're going to do what's necessary to remain in housing. We provide the case management services to help link them to the services, the additional services that they might need, or to help them overcome any bumps in the road along the way. They might be going, 2 or 3 months and doing fine, but all of a sudden something happens and they run into another roadblock. So, we're there for them to really make sure that they're getting all the financial assistance and linkage to other supportive agencies that they need. And then we have permanent supportive housing. And this is long-term financial assistance combined with long-term supportive case management services. These are the people that are chronically homeless, that have a disability, that can live on their own, but they need that subsidy. They might be getting Social Security disability with limited income, might have to take have mental health issues where they're they have medication management, need a SMA case manager to assist them with staying on their meds, not decomping, things like that. We have several permanent supportive housing programs through our Continuum of Care funding, and we also work well with several of the housing authorities in the area who have the mainstream vouchers, which target non-elderly persons with a disability. So, again, it's about collaboration and providing the level of case management needed with the level of permanent housing supports that are available within the area. Now, we believe in our Continuum of Care strongly encourages the housing first approach. And this is just a question that I ask, to see what you know about housing first. Housing first approach only works for permanent supportive housing, rapid rehousing, prevention. It works for all the above, does not apply to any of the above. Housing first actually, the housing first approach actually works for all interventions. It helps people move into rental housing with a lease as soon as possible. After they are housed, it provides the supportive services as needed and desired by the program participants. So the client always has a choice whether they want services or not. And in Housing First, they still have that choice. We encourage them to take advantage of any case management that we have, but by all rights, they don't have to. It's not housing readiness. We don't look at saying, well, we want to make this family ready for housing, so we're going to make them get substance abuse treatment or mental health treatment prior to them going into housing. It's getting them in the housing and then linking them with the services that they need to help them be successful. And for chronically homeless people, on an average, for one chronically homeless person, it costs the state of Florida $35,000 a year, or it costs the communities in the state of Florida $35,000 a year to support a chronically homeless person out on the street. And according to the 2020 point in time count, this translates for chronically homeless people, the number of chronically homeless people that we had, this translates into a little over $3 million a year. So, if we can get chronically homeless people and keep people, even homeless people, and prevent people from falling into homelessness, we can save our communities a lot of money. Housing First helps people who are homeless move into permanent housing quickly, without preconditions, barriers to entry, or barriers to continue housing. Housing First is not housing only. It's oftentimes easy to rapidly rehouse a person and say, hey, we're going to give you 3 months of assistance, good luck. Well, that's not housing first. Housing first, that's housing only. Housing first is being there for the family once we house them or the individual, and making sure that all their needs are being met or they're being linked to the supportive services that they need to overcome any barriers that are in their way. We want to make sure that we provide the case management to assist them to self-sufficiency and stability, because without that self-sufficiency and stability, level of stability, they're more likely to return to homelessness, and we got to start the whole process all over again. So case management is really, really the huge piece of this. Financial assistance is financial assistance, but without case management there to support them, housing first becomes housing only, and it goes south. Does housing first work? It does. It provides increased housing stability rates. Just by the mere fact that people have a house coming off the street and are housed, it improves their mental health. Over time, it has proven to reduce drug and alcohol use. It lowers returns to homelessness, and it lowers or reduces the cost of using emergency assistance and crisis response systems like emergency rooms, things like that, crisis units for mental health. And this is national data that we're citing here. So we talked a little bit about permanent supportive housing and rapid housing, diversion, things like that. Well, what about emergency shelters, campsites, and homeless service centers? Where do they fit in? They are essential pieces of the puzzle. They are an essential and needed piece of our crisis response system. Oftentimes, because we can't get people right into housing, we identify them one day and we can't get them into housing the next day. It takes time. The shelters can, and transitional housing can be used for your bridges. Case management should be housing focused. At that point in time, when we identify somebody, our first goal should be, how can we get them into housing in as little time as possible? And then along the way, we started identifying the needs and say, this person needs substance abuse or mental health issue, counseling or services, or they need linkage to career source for employment and things like that. And so we start developing a plan of action for them. Okay, so keep the focus on solutions to the problem, not management of the problem. If we commit to a housing, we need to commit to a housing first approach, regardless of the portal of entry. We want to flow participants through the housing response system of care into self-sufficiency. We want to maximize investment in an effective system to get folks into their own apartment in as little time as possible. Right now with the Emergency Solutions Grant, COVID-19 CARES Act funding, we have a large amount of money that we are trying to spend down and get for rapid rehousing and get people that are falling into homelessness because of the impact of COVID-19 into housing in as little time as possible. That includes, increasing our stock of rental units, and we're doing that by hiring housing locators and trying to get them out to engage landlords, let landlords know that we have a lot of money that can be put into their pockets if they're willing to work with our homeless populations. And with that being said, there's a lot of HUD has allowed for what's called landlord incentives for sign-on bonuses, extra security deposits, things like that, to entice landlords to work with our homeless populations, especially those just falling into homeless, to get them rehoused in as little time as possible. Okay, so again, through the state of Florida, DCF, we have the Emergency Solutions Grant and Emergency Solutions Grant CV or CARES Act COVID-related funding. This year we're working on, we were allotted $962,000 in Emergency Solutions Grant COVID-related funding for primarily for rapid rehousing. There's a little bit of prevention in there, but that incorporates the cost of case management. There's a non-congregate shelter component, which is hotel motel stays where the people that test positive for COVID or have a high acuity and need can be linked with hotel stays while they're waiting to get into housing. We're also working with all the emergency shelters, the First Step Shelter, the Bridge Shelter out at the Neighborhood Center, Hms Family Shelter, to get street homeless, literally people into shelters while they're waiting to get rapidly rehoused and working to rapidly rehouse them. So there's really a push to spend on this money and get people housed because there's a round 2 that's coming July 1, and that's a little over $1 million. So the money's here right now. We have a great opportunity to make a really significant impact on those people falling into homelessness because of COVID-19. There's also the County of Volusia ESG and CV CARES Act COVID-related funding, and basically, it provides pretty much resources for expansion of emergency shelters to accommodate isolation of impacted or COVID infected people in shelters, to expand their shelters a little bit. There's also a significant amount of rapid rehousing money through the County of Volusia for COVID CARES Act related funding. And then there's the HUD Continuum of Care permanent housing, which includes rapid rehousing and permanent supportive housing. And again, those are annual and renewed grants. We do an annual competition for them. Last year they were rolled over because of COVID-19 and there was no competition, but there will be a competition this year where the most successful grants are retained, and the grants that aren't doing so well, the Commission on Homelessness and Housing tries to, or opens up the competition for reallocation to new grants or new providers, and that will be happening this summer. HUD has yet to release that NOFA, notice of funding availability, but once they do, we will publicly post that, and it is an open competition. There's also, funding for affordable housing through the Florida Housing Finance Corporation, State Housing Initiative Program, and again, what's called low income tax credit housings. These are, larger developments that, like a lot of for-profit and non-for-profit housing developers, try to come into the community and open up affordable housing through the various resources that they can access. I put this on here just to educate everybody a little bit about the cost of participating in the homeless management information system. It is basically, the initial user training is $50. The cost of licenses is absorbed by the Volusia Flagler County Coalition for the Homeless, and the user licensing fees are actually, this has gone up to $360 per user per year. But it's what the agencies pay for is the user fees and the training annually. And, it is really a resource that we encourage agencies to consider getting into, because it provides a vast amount of data, information. You can see what clients have, what agencies clients are engaged in, what resources they've accessed, and what resources actually they haven't accessed and that they really need. And finally, The emergency rental assistance program, you know, as is in play right now. Volusia County has started theirs. Right now they have close to 2,000 applications, and they have closed down their process until they get through a lot of those applications and provide the funding that's needed for rental arrears. They can provide emergency rental assistance, can provide up to 12 months of rental assistance and utility assistance. They can provide for arrears and up to 3 months of rent moving forward. Again, Volusia County is closed right now. They're trying to process the significant amount of applications that they received to date. And the state of Florida has just opened ourflorida.com, which is their link to the emergency rental assistance program. So, you know, if you go onto that, it gives you about 8 or 9 questions that a family would have to answer in order to see if they qualify, and then they can go into, if they do qualify, then go into the website and apply for rental assistance. The Volusia Flagler County Coalition for the Homeless outreach. If you come in contact with a homeless person and, you know, like you have no way, you're not an HMIS participating agency and you want to link them into HMIS and coordinated entry, you can call our outreach number. We respond within 24 to 48 hours, and we'll meet that client where they're at or set an appointment for them to come into the office so that we can get them, do an intake and get them into coordinated entry. The other agencies that have the, and I listed the 3 that have the Emergency Solutions Grant, CV funding. You know, that's the funding that's really active right now. Halifax Urban Ministries, Neighborhood Center, and Flagler Cares. And this is just some other websites and resources. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Yeah, so if you guys have any questions, you can go ahead and write them in the chat, and then I'll pass it on, because he can't see the chat box. So I'll pass along your questions and he can answer those.
I know it's a lot of information, a lot to digest, so.
Okay, no comment, no questions. Thank you for the presentation.
Okay.
We'll give it a couple more minutes. All right. Oh, here's one from Vito Amato. How much does documentation affect support for services?
Okay, so the more documentation you have, the quicker the process is going to go. So the more you can access up front, you know, obviously the quicker that we can substantiate the need for, or the substantiate that they qualify for like rapid rehousing or permanent supportive housing, or for whatever program that we want to try to link them to. So, you know, the first things first, we want to get them into the system, and if they need further assistance through outreach, link them to that. But getting the documentation, you know, of their, for like permanent supportive housing, of their chronicity, of their disability, things like that, it's essential. That's pretty much essential for them qualifying. For rapid rehousing, not so much, but we need to document that they're literally homeless. So that's an important piece of it. And get all, you know, most of the income certification, things like that, that will help us, process them and make referrals to the agencies that have the housing dollars. So yeah, it's important, but it's not a game breaker if there's no documentation. We want to start them in the process and, get the ball rolling. That's the most important thing.
All right, and then from Nicole Nickerson, hello, I am from Connecticut, moved to Florida and works with the homeless. There has been thoughts of discuss the programs available on the BNL calls. So we are not continuing to talk about the same client over and over, meaning there are this many rapid rehousing vouchers available or this many PSH openings.
Okay, so she's talking about the by name list, and
Okay, yep,
that's BNL.
yep.
And I mean, we have those bi-weekly, and hopefully that you're not talking about the same people, because we are linking them to rapid rehousing, and that's the goal, is to get people linked, in as little time as possible. So I know that, based on, what I've seen so far, we placed a significant amount of people into rapid rehousing options. And so I hope they're not talking about the same people over and over. I know that some people are, there are going to be people on hard to place clients on the by name list because of barriers and things like that. But even with that being said, the referrals to the agency should be moved forward. And we should try to be linking them to an agency that will accept them and work with them to get them into housing as fast as possible. So I hope I answered your question.
She said yes, thank you. All right, so that looks like it's it. So thank you, Jeff, for your presentation and for the resources and information. Thank you all for attending this session today. I am now going to end the meeting. Please navigate back to our event platform on the HOVA or to our virtual event program to join your next sessions. All right, thank you. Have a good day, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.